Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is Project 61, the mission to give truckers a longer, healthier life with my friend Jeremy Reymer. How's it going, Jeremy?
Fantastic. Great to see you, Joe.
I've been wanting to interview you for a long time. You're a busy man. So, Jeremy, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure. Yeah. Jeremy Reymer. I'm the founder and CEO of Project 61. It's a nonprofit 501c3 organization, really spearheading a movement around driver health and wellness in trucking that I'm sure we'll unpack a little bit more. And I am dialing in here from Carmel, Indiana, suburb just north of Indianapolis.
Yep. I don't want to bury the lead on this one. So what is the significance of Project 61?
So 61 is the average life expectancy of a commercial truck driver in America.
Damn.
Exactly the response that I had when it just hit me between the eyes. And I felt like I needed to do something about that. It was last year, 2024, I founded the company, but I was busy with a few other things, another company that
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I couldn't lean into it much yet, but I was able to at least leverage my industry influence and network in order to help spread awareness of the issue, which I felt like under those circumstances, I was really pleased to see that. And not only that the message spread, but that there was a lot of support around it. It was clear that I struck a nerve.
Yeah, I told you this before we hit the record button, that I was at Manifest last year and somebody came up and said, "Hey, do you know about Project 61? And I said, no. And my first thought is, okay, Project 44, Venture 53. I thought some San Francisco-based company. And then he said, the average truck driver dies at 61 years old. And I think I reached out to you right after Manifest and finally we're 8 months later, whatever it is. But I was shocked. And this guy owned a trucking company. He goes, "No, Joe, that's a true story." And I thought that is totally unacceptable. And every once in a while, the industry goes through this. And by the way, I believe everyone is well-meaning when they say, "I want to be a shipper of choice" and all that. And it's still a very tough job. We have not made this job easy. And we'll get into all the problems, but obviously the drivers have to want it too. We'll talk about all those things in a minute. But so who do you think of as your customers and what problem are you solving for them?
Right now, with Project 61 especially, right, my customer, first and foremost, it's the end user, it's the driver. While I will say this, 30,000 foot view, all of America overall, especially versus the rest of the world, we have a problem. Standard American diet, we have a problem with obesity and all these other issues. But then trucking even, is, if you drill down a little bit further, and then obviously the driver at they have the most acute issue. That's where what the real focus is. But that said, as a nonprofit, what I'm really grateful for is the amount of support that we have seen from all corners of the industry. If you're on the carrier side, if you're on the vendor side, and even outside of the industry on the periphery, there are people that if you talk to about this issue, they say, "Oh, man, wow, that's not good."
I mentioned Wreaths Across America when I was talking to them. They have an iHeartRadio station and they have my podcast on there, which I appreciate. It's a great organization. Please look them up. I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes about Wreaths Across America. But when I mentioned Project 61 to them, they go, "Oh, we need to get involved." And I was like, "Yep." And we have organizations like St. Christopher's Fund. Still, it's been around for a long time, but still not real well known, not as well known as it should be. And I think that was traditionally more focused on accidents and sick illness as they came along.
Yeah, hard skips in general, right?
Yep. And I do think they are thinking, how do we get proactive about this? How do we make sure drivers have a better life?
Yeah. They're good friends. We've jointly promoted some 5Ks and virtual 5Ks together with the folks from St. Christopher's Fund. And another mission-driven organization that we align well with.
Yep. I like it. We'll get into more details about all this in a minute. But first, Jeremy, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? some career highlights before you started this company, Project 61.
Yeah. All right. Where do we begin? I grew up in Southern California, born and raised there, spent most of the first 30 years of my life there. I actually, shortly after, I went to a small college outside after high school, but then I started working on the Pacific Stock Exchange in Los Angeles before it closed. So overall, for about 7 years, I worked on the trading floor of the stock exchange in Los Angeles, and it was a fantastic experience. And I thought that's exactly where I want to be. But I also played football in high school, and I wanted to play football in college while I had the chance. So I left that for a little bit, went to a small school outside of Knoxville, Maryville College, outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. And then I transferred to Georgia and went to the University of Georgia. And this is in the mid 90s. And then I moved back to LA, moved to Long Beach, California, went back to work on the trading floor until it closed in 2001. And I was being invited, why don't you have this business opportunity, family business in Indianapolis, to run this truck driver staffing company or help run it. And I said, Indiana, trucking. I live a block from the ocean. I don't know. I don't think so. But fast forward a year and a half later, I ended up getting married. And I told my wife, what do you think? This opportunity is still there. Keep asking. And he said, let's give it a shot. If we don't like it, we'll move back. We didn't have any kids or anything. And so we moved to Indiana. And my mindset in that scenario is if you're going to give something a shot, you really got to give it a shot, right? You can't keep one foot in Long Beach and keep looking over your shoulder, right? You just need to burn the boats basically and just be all in. And so we did. And what I realized really quickly was how amazing the trucking industry is and how the demand for drivers was really strong and really has more or less always been that way since I've been in the industry now 22 years. And I ended up buying that staffing company, the truck driver staffing company, in 2008 and grew that, started building software to help us operate more efficiently at scale. And then I ended up selling that company in 2017 because I was transitioning to another company that I started in 2017 called Driver Reach, which was a driver recruiting and compliance software solution that I was able to have an exit in 2025 earlier this year, end of March. And so it was that exit that allowed me to really lean in to Project 61. But I actually, about a year and a half ago, recognized that this was a crisis, a driver health crisis. And I think it was maybe a combination of me getting older as I'll be 52 this year, as me seeing firsthand the drivers that I've employed over the years.
61 seems young to you now, doesn't it?
It's getting younger. Yeah, exactly. The older we get. And also just taking care of my own health. I've got a pretty major why, right? My why, I've got a 11, a 12, and a 13-year-old who I got started a little bit later than many do. So I have to ensure that I am around and in good. It's one thing to be alive. It's another thing to actually be living in the quality of life. And so I've been taking care of myself. And as I have gone through that journey, I recognized how we got to help these drivers. We got to do something. And so that was the reason for founding Project 61. And now with the transaction that took place earlier this year, I'm able to really lean in more with my time and resources.
I love it. I love it. When we get back to the title, Project 61, the mission to give truckers a longer, healthier life. It's not just longer. So a lot of times I read a book about, I think it was called Outlive last year. It was about Peter Attia. Oh, you got it? Okay. I listen to books now, but by the way, that was a long book. It was like 17 hours long.
1.5 speed. Everything is 1.5 speed.
I know. And I have a daughter who always says, I listen at 2 times speed. I was like, I can't even listen that fast. But
yeah, there's a limit.
Yeah, I agree with you. But he makes the point in that book, and I think he's not the only one, which is it's not about living to 90 years old if the last 20 years you're decrepit.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's lifespan and then there's health span. And the goal is to be as healthy as you can be for as long as you can be. So ideally, I joke about this as a nasty thing to say, but me and my friends say this. I always tell my friend, yeah, at your age, you only got about 10, 15 more years. Or 10 or 15 more good years, then a whole bunch of bad ones after that. And that's not the goal.
Right. Like, yeah, that's not, I don't look forward to that.
No, none of us do. And no one wants to be 80 years old and a burden to their family. And by the way, all old people start to feel like they're a burden to their family no matter what. Anyway, we want drivers to be healthier. And so let's talk about one of the challenges. Why are they so unhealthy? Take us through that.
But the number one reason, in my opinion, is diet and what's consumed while on the road. But that said, I certainly don't want to take away from the horrible impact that non-movement has, as well as poor sleep and then just ongoing stress. But those three things, right, especially nutrition,
Diet, stress, and what was the other one?
movement, right, lack of movement, the sedentary lifestyle, and then sleep, consistent sleep. The sleep is critical, but all of these things they're like three legs to a stool.
Yep. I'll throw one other thing in there. And I've seen these stats and I live these stats. I used to do some work when I was still an automotive guy. It was an hour away. And an hour away doesn't seem like it's horrible, but a lot of it is in traffic and it's unpredictable. When it would snow, it'd be an hour and 15 or an hour and a half. And so I was working a lot of times 10, 11-hour days and throw in 2 more hours of commuting. And sometimes I'd be on my way home. It'd be 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and I'm hungry. And now I'm like, okay, there's that party store that sells slices up here. There's McDonald's a little further on. I would eat that crap sometimes on the way home. By the way, when you have a 2-hour commute, you know what goes away? The gym and time with family. That's what you lose. And sometimes sleep, sometimes all three. And then you're eating garbage. But here's the thing. I've seen these articles about it. Difficult commutes is something that we never get used to. A lot of stress you get used to. We don't get used to commuting stress. And drivers, in effect, are commuting all the time.
It's their job is to commute.
Can you imagine being in a traffic jam in Chicagoland every day and then having cars who, it's oftentimes the cars that cause the accidents.
Well, yeah. And you're just in their way, right?
Yeah. And you've got this giant trailer, and they're jumping in front of you and braking. All sorts of stuff that would be very stressful.
Yeah, it's a really tough job. I'm going to say it's probably one of the toughest jobs in America. And it's not like this is just an American issue, by the way. Everywhere around the world, lorry drivers or truck drivers, depending on what country you're referring to, same challenges, whether it's a driver shortage, whether it's driver health, all the same sort of issues that we have here. We're just the biggest economy in the world, right? And so from that,
I think I read that we're 40% of the trucking in the world.
That could be. I know that we haul 70% of America's freight by truck, a little over 70%. You get really
it's an unbelievable amount. And so I had seen an article somewhere a while back, and you probably know better than I, but I think they said that truck stop food is 20% higher price than Walmart. So if you decide I'm going to grab myself something to eat, maybe a sandwich or an apple or whatever, I'm always paying extra. And I know for a long time, truck stops are almost stereotyped, notorious for having comfort food. And by the way, if I had to drive a truck, I could see myself going, oh no, Joe needs some comfort food. Give me my mashed potatoes. I'm going to need some apple pie when I'm done. Get another slice of meatloaf. I could see that being how I would want to eat. And it would feel very natural. I deserve it. Look what I just went through.
Right. And it tastes good, right?
Oh, yeah. But anyway, getting back to it, the diet, it's not easy. It's not like you can go, oh, I'm going to stop at the Erewhon right off the expressway here in Gary, Indiana. That is not what they have there.
No, but the reality is if you're an over-the-road truck driver, almost all of them have a refrigerator in the truck. What's critical is that you have to be so intentional. You have to prepare. If you know you're going out,
you got to make your own lunch.
Yeah, and at least pack your refrigerator with healthy options. And I'm talking about whole food types of things. And then when you do go to that truck stop, that you will pay a higher price for because it's a convenience store. That's what you pay for, the convenience, right?
Yeah, and they got a lot of comfort food in those places. If you go to a truck stop, and I do stop at truck stops deliberately, they've definitely upped their game in the last decade, but it's still, and they're going to serve their consumer whatever their consumer wants. So if people are eating pizzas and macaroni and cheese, that's what they're going to give us. And I don't think any of us think you take all the unhealthy choices out of the truck stops. That's not the point of this. Just work in the healthy stuff.
Yeah, and it's okay to eat for once in a while, eat something that's maybe borderline. It's fine. You're a human. Enjoy life. But at the same time, candidly, this is one of my favorite. There's an author, Michael Pollan's his name. He's written a bunch of books on diet and health related things. And he says in 7 words, this is how, how to think about food. Eat food, and he's talking about real whole human food, mostly plants, mostly, not only, he's not a vegetarian or anything, but mostly plants, not so much. If we just followed that, we would not have so much of the epidemic.
But by the way, Peter, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right. Is it Peter Attia or I heard someone say Attia? I don't know what it is. But anyway, you see him a lot on social media. He has a whole section of his book about diet. And he's very interesting because he said, I've been a vegetarian. I've been a vegan. I've done the all meat diet. I've done the keto diet. He goes, and I've done the research. He goes, I'm a medical doctor. I've done the research. And he said, I am going to get lots of hate mail for this. People have a religious zealotry around the diet. And he said, I'm going to tell you this, eat healthy foods and then go for a walk, go for a walk, go for a walk. And the message I got from that book is you can improve your health by eating healthier foods, but you can really improve your health by exercising.
Yeah, there's a difference, right? Health, exercise, obesity, diet. You're not going to exercise your obesity away. Your diet is going to be the biggest factor there.
I always say, and I've struggled with my weight much of my life, I have to be getting exercise because it burns off the stress. So if you're trying to watch what you eat, and by the way, I hate saying this because I don't want to sound preachy, but I'll say I stopped drinking alcohol for the most part. I don't have an alcohol problem per se, but it would interrupt my sleep. Yeah, and then when my sleep was interrupted,
you can see that.
I noticed my Whoop would tell me you had a drink last night, and I noticed. And if I don't sleep right, I don't go to the gym and I don't eat right the next day. And so it's a little thing. And by the way, I also don't buy anything sugar for my house. And during COVID, I think a lot of us got in some bad habits where you go, home all the time. Bring me some sangria, which gives me both the sugar and the booze that I so desperately need in my life.
The COVID game, I bought 2 weeks worth of booze for the second time this week.
My cousin said to me, he goes, yeah, you bought the box wine from Costco. He goes, because it feels bad if you go through a whole bottle. Exactly. There's 4 bottles in there. It doesn't seem like you're drinking much. But anyway, getting back to it, diet and movement, these would be really difficult. And I think the stress that these drivers are under, can't ever say I was a truck driver, but one time, a long time ago when I was young, somebody said, hey, would you pick up this prototype truck in Chicagoland and drive it back to Detroit? It's 4.5 hours. But we had this huge snowstorm. And while I was flying over to Chicago, and by the way, the plane was in that storm, then they started saying something about maybe emergency landing. We're over Lake Michigan. I was like, there's no emergency landing here, man. So that was stressful enough. The truck wasn't ready. It snowed a lot, and I was driving. And every time I would call to say, I think I'm going to be late, they would scream bloody murder at me on the phone. And I remember I was thinking, I didn't make it snow 12 inches. I shouldn't be driving.
I'm just trying to get home safely and be alive.
It took me eight plus hours to go 4.5 hours. I didn't get extra money for it. And I got yelled at multiple times because it snowed. And I was thinking, that was like a 6-wheeled, like Iveco or something. And I remember thinking, I don't know how these guys do it driving these trucks. I was like, God bless them.
Yeah, it's probably a daily occurrence for them. What you just described was like, yeah, that was Tuesday.
Yep. Yeah, so we talked about diet. It's a real problem. We talked to this. That's one of the problems. They're not getting enough movement. If you're driving all day, you're not driving to your gym. You're a day away from your gym. It's very stressful. Commuting stressful, driving stressful. And then talk about the sleep, because I know not all drivers are sleeping in their trucks, but I know it's a big problem for when those guys are sleeping in their trucks.
And the reality is, the hours of service, you've got a 10-hour window. That's it, right? So I'm going to drive all day long, right? I've got up to 11 hours of drive time, 14 hours that I could be working. And then I've got a 10-hour break. Hopefully I've got some place where I can park, that I can try to get a decent night's sleep in terms of like disturbances or distractions. But I got a 10-hour window. Just imagine you and me, if at the end of the day, you're done for the day from work, and in 10 hours, you have to be at work again and go for another 14 hours or whatever it is. Like we don't have a 10-hour window. We probably have a 15, 16-hour window from the time that we have to work tomorrow.
I think there's another aspect of this, and I think people started saying it a year or so ago, which is we have a utilization problem. So when people say we have a truck driver shortage, we're constantly recruiting, but it's not because the trucking business is necessarily growing. We're losing people because of this isn't a good job for a lot of people.
Yeah. Leave the job out of choice, right? Like maybe they want to do something else. But more often than not, they either physically aren't able to get qualified anymore. They can't pass a DOT physical, not even at 6 months or a year certification. And then, or they die. And this is the sad thing I'm going to say, as I have been on this journey the past year and a half and really focused on having conversations with carriers, you would be saddened. It's so sad. It's so shocking how many carriers will acknowledge that just in this year alone, they're losing drivers that work for them, that while like they die in the cab, outside of the cab, sometimes slumped over the steering wheel. They've had an episode of some sort and they die. Where else in America or in the world is that a career that is happening with that sort of consistency?
Right. Yep. And it's been a long time, but I had Dean Croak on my podcast. Dean?
Oh, yeah, very well.
And Dean was on, I think he was my second or third guest, so it's 700 episodes ago. And he said this hours of service, which I think all the Western world has it. I think he was a driver in Australia originally, then he moved to England. Now he's, I think, in Boston. And he's one of the flat out experts because he's been a driver and he's been a researcher for a long time, advocate for drivers. And one of the things he said is it's very difficult on drivers when you say, okay, you have to sleep at this time, you have to drive at this time. And it might not be when you normally would want to be awake or when you want to. And I struggle. He goes, the hours of service, he goes, maybe they're important. He said, but now we have the ELD. He goes, you don't get to decide when you drive and you don't get to decide when you sleep. And I keep thinking, we've all driven long distance and you go, oh, I should be tired, but I feel great. I feel like I'm on my game and I'm going to go an extra hour. Other times you go, I don't know why I'm tired, but I'm tired. I'm going to pull off and stop. Drivers don't have that. So they might be drowsy and trying to keep themselves awake. And then they are always dealing with, again, talk about a stress point. I'm an hour away, but I'm running out of hours. So how do I get to that drop off? Or do I have to call and say, sorry, I ran out of hours and I'm 40 minutes away? And now, in addition, I have to find somewhere to sleep, and there might not be anywhere good to sleep. And that, by the way, one more reason we don't have women in this business. It's bad enough that guys have to potentially sleep in a place they don't know about or think this is a little sketchy. No one wants their dad or their brother or their friend doing that, and definitely don't want your daughter, wife, or loved one doing that.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very difficult job. And so this is why I keep saying you got to be so intentional. And the sleep part is the hardest one. The one that you have the most control over as a driver is the diet part, because you are going to eat every day, right? Multiple times throughout the day, you're going to consume food or you're going to consume something. Let's hope it's real human food, because that's really important. But when you also have to be intentional, even on the movement side, when you've got a 30-minute break, what happens most of the time, you park the truck, you walk inside the truck stop, and then you sit down again. You've been sitting all day. Move, walk around. You don't have to go run wind sprints. Just walk, stretch. If there's anything that you can do to get your blood flowing, get your heart rate going a little bit, that is going to pay off. And it'll help you sleep later too. And then the average driver is sleeping like 4.68 hours.
Oh God.
And that by itself, that's not how you live. And like you were talking about earlier, it's not how you're going to live long and with good quality of life.
Yep. I always say this to people when we talk about this, but I'll say it again. The driver's life is not only is as difficult, but I'll throw this out there is, Jeremy, if I was driving to your house in Indiana, you're probably 4 or 5 hours away. I got in my car and I drove over and I got to your house and I called and said, hey, Jeremy, I'm at your house. You there? You're going to go to lunch. You can go, oh, hey, Joe, I'm at Home Depot and I got to do this and I got to do that. I'll be home in about 2 hours. Just sit there. After I drove 5 hours, I'm going to sit in my car. And then you probably say, oh, and don't sit in front of my house. Could you go down to the block and park somewhere else?
I'm ready for you.
Yeah. I would be like, okay, that is my new sworn enemy. How dare you treat me that way? That is the norm for drivers. They often have their time wasted and they might be, again, missing stuff at home. I don't care what you had at home. Even if you said, hey, my kid doesn't have a game. I got nothing going on, but I should be at my house rather than sitting in a truck somewhere. And I think, this is me going on a limb, we optimize around the dock time always. So the dock opens at 8 and it closes at 4, whatever it is. And I think, okay, I get it. I think if we wanted to at least think about this, why can't I optimize around the driver's hours? He's the one who's constrained. The rest of us, I can open my dock at 7 p.m. I got people there. I feel like we got to do a better job of optimizing around the bottleneck. And the only bottleneck, I know every dock and warehouse person listens say, we have our own constraints. But I keep thinking, these are the guys who have this ridiculous life where I got there at 6 p.m. and I have to sleep in my truck overnight so I can deliver in the morning rather than unload right now and go home. That's weird. And
like the byproduct or consequences of this movement of Project 61's, this movement about addressing driver health and wellness, could be that there becomes more flexibility in shippers, consignees, and how they respond to some of the challenges that we're addressing.
Yep. Somebody was on my podcast. I think it's AI Fleet. It's a trucking company, but the guys who started were software guys. So they developed an optimization software, and they said we're getting 30 or 40% more utilization for drivers, which means they're getting paid more, being home more, better life. And I forgot the guy's name now. I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode. But he said, and I'll use the story he used. Jeremy, if you and I, career change for us, we are now own a surgery center, and we have 25 surgeons working in our surgery center, and we are going to optimize around surgery. So I'm going to say, Jeremy, what are we going to do? We say, no meetings, no unnecessary meetings. I don't want them filling out paperwork that they don't have to fill out. I will get a clerk to do that. We are going to make it so easy for that surgeon to come in and do maximum amount of surgeries. If 10's the number he can do in a day, if 8's the number she can do in a day, we are going to optimize around that. And the reason is because all of our surgeons make $500,000 or $1 million a year. We have to get our money's worth.
Specialists, you need to make sure that they're doing the important stuff.
So then we switch over and say, okay, now how do we treat drivers? They don't make $500,000 a year. But the thing is, the truck is only of value when they're driving it. So we don't optimize around them. We optimize around everything other than them. And I think it's bad business for one, but I think it's also not helping this situation with their health. And I think we need to re-look at that. And what we've always assumed is we can train new drivers. We train a whole bunch of new drivers. They'll come into the business. They'll do it for a little while, and they'll move on unless they find a job that is suitable for them.
Yeah, that's a sad reality though, when the parallel that you just gave with the surgeon and the driver, both specialists took training, teaching, coaching, certification, very similar concept.
Yeah, the truck is a giant anchor around my neck if it's not driving. And the only time it drives is when that truck driver's in that truck. So anyway, we've talked about the problem, and I think everybody knows this problem. We've heard it. And when it was a few years back, we would have a whole bunch of that. Hey, be a shipper of choice. And I think, hey, do something good for a trucker this week. And I think, and now it's a buyer's market. We don't hear that as much. And we should, because I think this is one of those things. By the way, when we talk about fair trade, everyone's, oh, I want to make sure that my clothes weren't made by slaves somewhere. We can have fair trade right here in our own country with the guys who are our neighbors and our friends. So I think we need to start asking, are the drivers involved in this project being treated right? And it's not just health, but is this a good job? Do you want to keep it? Because that turnover, it costs money. And you know that because you're in that business for a long time.
And honestly, the best way to improve that turnover and to reduce your recruiting spend and have better chances on the front end there is just care about your people, take care of them. And one of the best ways that you can do that is to provide them with some of the benefits of promoting a healthier lifestyle, and not just for the driver, but for the driver's family too. Like, then now you're human. Now you're treating them like a human being.
So we've talked about the problem, and I know you and your team, you're the part of the solution. So what is Project 61? Hit the mission one more time, but then what are you guys doing to achieve that mission?
So it was when I first founded it last year. Again, this was before I was able to really lean in. It was primarily around awareness, education, and resources. And when I say resources, I was pointing to others in the industry, other vendors on whether it was addressing nutrition or movement or sleep, et cetera, mental health. I was pointing to those companies as allies, if you will, partners in the effort to improve the situation. I also realized, as awareness is only going to go so far, I needed to turn awareness into action. And so at the end of July, Project 61 acquired a trucking specific digital health company called Offshift. I'd gotten to know the founder and CEO of Offshift really well over the last several years, 4 years, and really well aligned from a mission standpoint. And the reason why that acquisition made sense from a nonprofit was there's no way that Project 61 or anybody is really going to make a dent in this crisis if technology isn't leading the way. And so being able to we're talking about wearable technology.
Yeah, I got a Whoop, and what do you have? The Aura?
Aura Ring. I've got a watch that's on the charger, but
by the way, anybody listening, I'm in the Freight Whoop. Ryan Schreiber, if you want to join the Freight Whoop, talk to Ryan.
Yeah, I need to get one. I need to get one just so that I can join that group.
I think there's 20 of us. And yeah, by the way, I always win like the strain. And people go, yeah, I don't know how much you're working out. Dude, I'm old. That's what happens. When you get older, I get credit for wandering around the house, man. You are working out way harder than me. Trust me.
But that acquisition is really important. And what's key, and this is give you a glimpse of what happened last year. So this is before the Offshift acquisition, late last year, part of the awareness sort of mission for Project 61, I launched a 61-day step challenge. And it went from November last year, it went from November 1st through the end of the year. And I promoted it. The nonprofit raised about a little over $20,000 in sponsorship money, which again was telling to me that the industry wanted this and supported.
There's a hunger for it.
And we had about 504 participants in the step challenge. And it was just through a free app that I was promoting, and it was fine. It was great, but I didn't want to keep using that app. I didn't have any ownership of it. I couldn't control what we could do with it, and it wasn't enough. It was purely a step app. but it it got people engaged. It built a community. And that's really what Project 61 with Offshift is focused on, is building more of a community and not just a step challenge, although there'll be those types of things on an ongoing basis, but also focused on nutritional goals and challenges, movement challenges. And at the end of the day, we're really trying to help drivers want to make a difference and help them connect to their why. Because everybody has one. If you can just take a second and think, what is it that matters the most to me? And I look over your shoulder about the ultimate luxury is time spent with friends and family. We're all going to live until we
There's a limit. There's a limit to that, I found out.
But at the end of the day, I want to be around the people that I love. That is happiness. And
That's why I'm working.
yeah, and drivers don't get that luxury often enough.
Right. Yep. So you mentioned this. I wrote down two and I missed one. You guys provide education, something, and resources.
Yeah, awareness.
Awareness. There you go.
And education is just all about, here, let me give you some advice. Don't drink sugar. Don't eat sugar, but don't drink is even worse.
And I say this all the time. I'm not the one who should be giving advice, but sometimes it's just habits that we get into. And I mentioned alcohol. I just got in the habit of having a couple glasses of wine. And then when I stopped, and I'm not in the habit anymore, I don't miss it. It wasn't an addiction. If you can develop healthier habits, and what happens when you have a habit, you got to be disciplined for a little while, then it just becomes the habit you have. And it reduces the mental fatigue where you go, yeah, I drink something else other than sugar water when I'm driving. And it's a funny thing because when you're the first 20 days or however long it takes to get into that mode, it's hard. But then one day it's just what you do. And it's just like all adults. You brush your teeth. You're like, oh, I forgot I brushed my teeth. Sometimes I have to go check my tooth. Oh, yeah, I brushed my teeth. And that's ideally what you get to, a place where you say, I'm in the habit of bringing some vegetables and fruits with me when I get on the road. I have water. I have all the stuff that I want. So I'm not tempted to stop and have the mashed potatoes and the apple pie with my meatloaf.
Eating healthier, eating less, and recognizing and making sure that you're getting enough protein. At the end of the day, like the more protein that you can consume, natural protein versus like protein bars, I would say, is you're going to feel fuller. And then if you focus less on these refined carbs, ultra processed food items that they might taste delicious and they're really...
You're making my mouth water. Don't say any names.
Right, and they're really cheap. I get the allure, except they're killing you. They're not healthy. They're not checking any boxes from a nutrition standpoint, I promise. They're only negatively impacting you. And now you're drained and you just do over it every day, over and over again. And next thing, you've gained 50 pounds. You can't go upstairs. You can't pick up a grandchild. You can't pass a physical. But it's all preventable. It's all preventable.
Yep. So you mentioned awareness, and I was a trainer, so that's some of my background. And one of the things I'm always say when it says awareness is, I think that's called Kirkpatrick's matrix, but it basically, if you were to go get training, the first thing you get is awareness. And the first one might be, hey, my boss wants me to go to this nutrition class or watch this video or whatever. It's this high level where it's not for me. I have to do it. I have to check the box. And I'm aware that Jeremy keeps talking about it. That's it. And do I value it? Not so much. And so what we need to get is past awareness into a place where you go, not only am I aware, but I'm also taking it to heart, and I think it's important. And you have to have some sort of judgment, and it's obviously a positive judgment. You can't say, yeah, I'm aware that Jeremy wants this, and my boss thinks it's a good idea, and my wife thinks it's good, but I don't care.
I want a chili dog.
Yeah. You got to get to the place where you value it. And then next, you have to take action. And then I think the last thing, and we almost never measure this, which is the ROI. So if I did training on this and then you say awareness, everyone kind of gets the awareness. Yeah, people are talking about it. Number two, you have to value it at some point. And if you value it enough, hopefully take action. And then last but not least, there is an ROI for this. And I know we haven't talked about it, but I think if somebody's listening and say, yeah, I have truck drivers, I'm going to spend some time and money to educate them. Jeremy can help me. But at some point, I'm going to get an ROI. And the ROI on this probably is a real financial one. But more importantly, you're not going to have enormous turnover. And hopefully you never lose a driver because of their poor health.
When you're talking about the ROI for the company, I'll put a pin in that one for a moment. Let's talk about the ROI for the driver.
Yes.
Most of us retire. I think the average retirement age is, I don't know, 64, something like that. It's less than 65, I think, on average. I mean, that average life expectancy is 61. They don't even get to reach that, what we would call retirement age.
Yeah, by the way, we set the Social Security at 65 because at that point, most people had died. So we look at our Social Security.
Out of reach.
Yeah. So if they were to keep that in mind, they'd move Social Security to 75 now. Where you go? Yeah, that is when the majority of people are never going to collect. That's the way the government works.
But just think of that. We should, as humans, want this really important workforce to be able to retire and be healthy enough so that they can enjoy the luxury time spent with friends and family, like the stuff that matters the most. And everyone might be a little bit different. Maybe they just want to spend quality time with their spouse. Maybe
it's almost football season. So it's quality time on watching football.
Children or their grandchildren. But then now back to the company, obviously the ROI is certainly on the recruiting and retention side. That's easy, low-hanging fruit. But also from a productivity standpoint, from a risk standpoint, a healthy driver is a safer driver. That's just.
Oh yeah. And by the way, who doesn't want to work for a boss who says, hey dude, I want you around. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be healthy for the job, but I want you to be healthy because I care about you. I care about your family. Who doesn't want to work for that boss as opposed to the boss who doesn't give a damn?
And let's do it together. Let's do a challenge together. You and me, like, I get it. It's not the same. You're in the truck. I'm behind the desk and here in the shop or whatever, but I'll do it with you. Let's do it together. Let's hold each other accountable. Let's get our families involved a little bit, right? Let's see. That way your spouse can hold you accountable. You can hold your spouse accountable and so on. And let's just see how we feel when we do that. And you'll be amazed.
So we've talked about the problem, and this is the problem is the average truck driver is dying at 61 years old, which is that's just crazy number. And you said to me while we were prepping, I would have named it Project 61 if it wasn't such a shocking number. So if drivers were living to 74, you wouldn't call it Project 74, but this is a shockingly low number. And it's for lots of reasons. This is a very stressful job, which means you probably might eat some comfort food. You're not always exposed. You're not stopping at farm markets on your route. You're stopping at truck stops. They're not getting enough movement. They're not getting enough exercise. And sleep is, you said it's under 5 hours, which is ridiculous. So you started Project 61, and it's about education awareness. This is going to help people get to that place. And you got this off shift. So can we get wearable tech from off shift? Is that what you guys are?
So not necessarily the wearable tech, whether it's a Fitbit or anything that you already have, your Whoop or a Ring, all of that data is going to feed into off shift's digital mobile platform. So from that perspective, if you have wearable tech already, it's going to work. If you don't, we certainly can help you get that wearable tech, because everybody at the end of the day, I'd say in 5 years from now or so,
we'll all be wearing it. The doctors will look at a dashboard and say, where's my flock doing today? And by the way, it's much better to get a phone call saying, hey, Joe, I need you to come in right now today. I didn't see something I liked on your scan or whatever the hell it is. So if people are listening today, by the way, before I forget, I can imagine drivers right now saying, okay, so you got a camera looking at my face. You got a camera over my shoulder looking at the highway, and I have GPS on me. And now you want to measure my heart rate.
It's not, the company's not doing it. It's for their own sake.
Exactly. So it's this because we want you around, so we can keep you on the job and keep you healthy for your friends and family. If somebody's listening, and let's just say they're a freight brokerage or a trucking company or warehousing company, or maybe even a shipper, what can they do to get started working with Project 61?
Yeah, great question. Number one, I'd say visit our website. It's project-61.org.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Okay. And then it's very simple. It's called a trucker health pledge. One thing that they can do to say, hey, look, I care about this problem. I want to be a part of the solution, or I at least want to show my support, affirm my support for this issue. Sign the trucker health pledge. All you're doing is acknowledging that this is an issue and that you want to see it improve. It's that simple. Now you're in our database. We'll communicate with you on how progress is being made. And furthermore, there is opportunities for companies. We have corporate partnership opportunities to be sponsors, to be donors, and so on. That the whole purpose, if we can't get this kite, I'm backing it to a degree personally. We can't get this kite off the ground. It's another failed opportunity. I don't believe that's going to happen given the support that I've seen in the last year or so. But that is absolutely what I would agree.
I'm trying to think of it. I just turned my phone on. Hopefully it doesn't make a whole bunch of noise. But I think there's something that the government spearheaded, public-private, and hang on just a second. I think it was called Greenway. Shoot, I'm trying to think of what the name of that is. It's a private public, so the government kind of spearheaded, but it's basically, you'll see a lot of people will have in their signature line, we are partner with Smartway. You're right. I could not think of it. I would love to see something like that for Project 61, where we're a proud supporter of Project 61. And whether you're a broker or a carrier or a shipper, say, look, we value our partners. And this is a great way to show that. Again, we went through this a few years ago. Hey, be a shipper of choice. This is better than being a shipper of choice. This is actual effort towards, let's take care of our own. Let's take care of our team. And these guys we depend on. And during COVID, we're all like, oh, they're the frontline heroes. And then as soon as that ended, they're just drivers.
It's sad. We'll celebrate them once a year for a week. We'll eat all the food. They can't make it because they're out delivering.
Yeah, they're stuck at some terminal. Anyway, I'm going to summarize what we talked about, and then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Jeremy Reymer. We're talking about Project 61, the mission to give truckers a longer, healthier life. It's not just a longer life, it's a healthier life. So not just lifespan, health span. We want to keep them alive a lot longer than 61 years. But on top of that, we want them to be healthy years. And the problem, and we talked about this for a long time, is they have a bad diet. And that's somewhat on them. We can enable some solutions, but they're on the road. So they either have to be very proactive about what they pack, because the nature of where they're stopping is not that full of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy food. They're definitely not getting the movement. I would love to see truck stops. I know some truck stops have areas where you can hike right near them. And I think that's a great idea. If you could get out and go, I went for a half-hour hike in the woods for a minute, and I touched the ground and I breathe. That's good. Stress. These guys are in a constant commute. You never get used to that commute. It's a stressful job. I can't even drive an hour in the Detroit metro area without feeling like I got to lay down. I'm sick. And last but not least, sleep. We all know drivers are sleeping at odd hours in odd places. And sometimes they're not safe areas. I know you probably know the truck parking club. We got to get these guys so they can park somewhere safe where they say, by the way, I'd love to see those safe places have good, healthy food, and make it easier for these guys to say, yep, I stop here because I get a healthy meal and I get a good night's rest. So we talked about the problem. The solution is get involved with Project 61. And this is all about making everyone aware of the problem and educating them. And you guys have some resources. And it sounds like you guys are just getting started. More and more companies are getting involved. You made that acquisition for OffShift. And one more time, what does OffShift do?
So OffShift was a digital health company specifically for truckers. So it was a mobile app that drivers would use. So now it's powered by Project 61.
I love it. I love it. And you guys, I have you guys are starting to pull together an industry organization that you guys can lead. I like to think there's a whole bunch of leaders around the country. So it's never going to be about Jeremy. It has to be about the drivers and their company saying, hey, we've been given the resources, we've been given the education, we're going to pick it up from here.
Correct. Yeah. To be a spearhead, maybe a tip of the spear of that movement, that's great. But at the end of the day, if we're not all behind it and supportive of it, it's not going to be successful, or certainly not to the same extent.
I love it. I love it. Put a big old bow on this one, Jeremy Reymer. Final thoughts on the topic.
We have an opportunity to do something special here. And this is the only thing that I would really encourage people. Get behind Project 61. Help us make a difference in the lives of our nation's most valuable workforce.
I love it. I love it, Jeremy. I will make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, any other links you and your go-to-market team give me, I will put in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. What conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Project 61 at?
Just before the end of this year, a lot of state trucking associations that I've been active in for many years. American Trucking Association annual conference in San Diego, Women in Trucking in November. I think that's it through the year. And then I would expect and hope that next year there'll be a lot of opportunities to attend. You mentioned Manifest. I've never been. Love to be able to attend. I know it's a really big event. Love to be able to go to a lot more of those sorts of things because it's necessary.
Yeah, dude, you should be speaking at Manifest. I'm going to send them a note.
Please, yeah. Courtney?
Yeah, I'm not just saying that to be nice. This is something that is. So I think what's nice about Manifest is there are trucking companies there for sure, but you also get the tech companies and you get awareness beyond, you mentioned the truck driving organizations. Those are super important, but we got to get the shipper community to say, oh, I didn't know this was a huge issue. We'll do something about it. Yeah, I think this is a problem that affects everybody. And I think if you're a shipper, you should be aware. And I think you should also say, no, truck drivers will drive to certain locations for a little less money because they like the pickup location or they like the drop-off location. And I always thought, isn't that interesting? You spend a little time and effort to make sure that they get loaded or unloaded quickly. Maybe it's a smile. Maybe it's a nice driver lounge. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something where somebody says, I will deliver to that location because it's better. And it would be nice if we could get those guys to support Project 61. So I'm going to be taking care of them.
Totally agree.
Anyway, enough of my blather. It was a pleasure talking to you. It was well worth the wait. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Joe, I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward.
You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.